The way that I'm going to use Mask Pro in this webinar, it's primarily for portrait photography. Part of the webinar is to give you an idea of how you can use Mask Pro, but also part of it is to kind of address some of the common issues that come up when using Mask Pro. So let's go in. I've got 4 images that we'll work on today. They are right over here. And we'll start with a very basic one just to get ourselves acclimated with Mask Pro. So I'm going to open this image in Photoshop. Now, Mask Pro requires Photoshop to run. You can, as long as you've got Photoshop CS2 through CS5, you should be fine. So we've got this image here, and it's very basic. A model shot on a backdrop, a colored backdrop. And what I want to do is, drop her onto this background here. No, the rhyme and reason as to why I chose this background, there is none. It was just I had that background ready. I was working on another image actually that we're going to go over in this webinar, and I figured I'll just grab it because it was just easier. But it actually does end up looking kind of cool when we mask it in. So basically what Mask Pro does is it makes it easier for you to create somewhat complex masks. What a mask is this. You've got this layer here, your image, and then you've got another layer below it with your background. And you want to preserve your model and you want to get rid of the backdrop. To do that, you can create a mask, which we have right here. You can create a mask just by clicking on this little icon on the layers palette, and that'll create a new mask for you. Whatever you paint on a mask that's black will reveal the layer underneath it, and anything that you paint in white will hide it. So that's great and everything. If I select my paintbrush here and I have my black as my foreground, what I can do is I can just start painting, and I can start revealing the background. That's great, except when it comes to complex shapes like this translucent. How are you going to paint behind this translucent part of the dress? You can't. You're actually going to remove the dress because it's just using a basic brush. Or hair. If you try to paint around the hair, you might cut into the hair, and that's not good. You don't want that. So we're going to start with a very basic example. Let's revert the image back to its original position. So now we've removed those brushes that we just made. And let's go into Mask Pro. Now when I go into Mask Pro, I'll usually select the mask that I created, and that's when I'll launch Mask Pro. Now you can get into Mask Pro several ways. You can get into it using our On1 application palette, which you can bring up in Photoshop by going to Window, Extensions, and selecting On1. That'll pop up the application palette. Or you can go into File, Automate, and then select Mask Pro right here. So what I'm going to do is just double click on Mask Pro to launch it. And let me just reset everything here and go over the basics of Mask Pro. So what I did was, and just to kind of give you an inner monologue, I went into Window and Zoom Window, and what that does is it puts the image on a white background. And for me, I like that. When I'm working on an image, I kind of want to reduce any of the clutter of Photoshop with all of its palettes. I just want to focus on Mask Pro. So by going to Window and Zoom Window, it'll put the image on its own layer. Now the way that Mask Pro is fundamentally different than using a regular masking brush in Photoshop is that instead of just blindly drawing and just kind of getting as close to the edge as possible, or even using a quick select, we use color to differentiate between what we want to keep or protect and what we want to drop or remove. And to do that, we've got these 2 droppers on the top of the menu bar right here. We've got a keep dropper and a drop dropper. And you can see that we've got palettes over here, a keep palette and a drop palette. As we start selecting colors, they'll add to the respective bucket. So if I select my keep dropper, what I want to do is select colors that I want to protect, that I do not want to remove. So in this case here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this section over here. Actually, before that, let's even take a step back. Let's get ourselves to a place where we are we get rid of the majority of the work. This is how I always work when I use Mask Pro. You can see that we've got kind of a predominant background area over here. There's a pretty easy way to get rid of most of it in 2 steps. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to select this flat paintbrush here. Now, this brush, it doesn't do anything other than just paint, but you've got these 2 different modes here. If you select this top square, this little green square, that's going to restore any pixels. If you click on it, it switches to this transparent square, which will remove pixels, which will actually kind of get rid of that layer. So what I always do is I select the flat brush, and I make sure that I'm on the erase mode, or this transparent mode, and I do as close of an outline to my image as I can. So all I'm doing is just outlining what I want to keep. And you'll see how we'll save a lot of work. I'm going to get a little closer here. And all I'm doing is I'm drawing out an outline. Okay. Now that I've drawn an outline, I can go to my bucket tool, which is right below the brush tool. And I can just click in. And instantly, we've removed a majority of the background. Now that was nothing. I mean, that you can do in Photoshop, but I like to kind of get the heavy lifting out of the way. And you can see we have these different mask modes. If you go to View and then Mode, if we go to 5, Composite, now we're starting to see the image with the background. So the image is starting to appear. And really, it's up to you. I'll toggle between 5 and 2. So 2 is our transparent mode. So if you go here, you'll see it's just a single layer with the transparent background. It depends on whether you want any distractions or not. So right now, I don't want too many distractions. So again, let's start getting rid of the harder parts, the parts that actually where the background meets the surface of our foreground or our model. Now let's start with this area right here, inside of the arm, the bent arm. Again, what we want to do is select our keep and drop sets. And the way that I work is I work in zones. I break my image up into zones. And the reason why I do this is because you don't need to select all of your keep and your drop colors for the entire image at once. What I mean by that is this. Let's get rid of this first part, and it'll kind of become clear. So I'm going to select my keep dropper. And remember, the keep dropper is you're going to select the colors that you want to protect, the colors that you do not want to remove. And in this case, the colors that I want to protect are the colors around the inner part of this gap. So her skin. Now watch, as I'm clicking, I'm just selecting different areas. The belt, the dress. I'm going to try to get like the white and the black parts of the dress, of the checkered pattern. And you can zoom in if you want to zoom in, you can, to get kind of a finer selection. So let's see how that is. Let's kind of get over here. And what we want to drop are these various shades in the background. Now, a question that I often get is, well, how many colors should I select? How many keep colors? How many drop colors? The best answer I can give you is select the minimum amount of colors that you think will get you going. The more colors that you select, the more processor intensive Mask Pro will become. And think about it, it makes sense. So let's say I selected, 30 colors for my keep and 20 colors for my drop. When I use this magic brush, which I'll go over in a second, Mask Pro is going to actively compare keep colors and drop colors with every single movement that I make. The more colors I have, the more calculations it has to make. So that's why we recommend, there's no magic number. You just kind of use what's best for you. And let's see what happens here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select this magic brush. The magic brush is very special. It's pretty much one of the hearts of Mask Pro. This will actively, like I said, compare the keep and drop colors against each other. So by selecting the masking brush, I want to make sure I'm in the remove section. It's the same thing as the flat brush. You've got a keep and remove, and a remove. Remove is the best option in my opinion. And so what we're going to do, you can see, all I'm doing is I'm drawing along here. And I can already see that I've removed a piece of the model's skin. right over here. But that's not a problem, not worried about that. But notice how I'm able to draw over edges, and it's retaining that information. I kept the complex shape here without worrying about um, uh, cutting into the dress. Now you can see that I removed, if we zoom in a little bit, you can see right over here, let me just move it to the center, we kind of removed a piece of her arm. The easiest way for me to restore that is go back to my flat brush and change to the restore mode. So remember when I outlined her to remove the background, I had the flat brush with the remove mode. Now I'm going to put it into the restore mode or the paint in mode. And all I'm going to do is just paint right in to restore that part of her skin. You can also see that there's this weird kind of pattern or glow from the background. We can kind of fix that if we zoom out a little bit. We've got this cool tool here called a magic chisel. And all I'm going to do is, with a very small brush, just kind of paint along the edge. And what that's doing is it's removing about 1 or 2 pixels from the edge, and it's getting rid of that kind of halo from the background that we just painted. And I will do this for all major edges because it kind of gives it a more of a smoother transition to the background that we're going to mask. And so it did a really nice job of removing that. Now that I kind of outlined this complex area, I can easily just use a flat brush and paint out the remainder of it. I could have used the magic brush as well, but when I've got kind of room to play, I know that the magic brush will do a much better job because it's not doing any comparison. It's just removing or it's going to add back. So the nice thing about the magic brush is, let's say I'm painting and I paint through. Oops, all I do is change to restore, and now I can paint it back in. And I'll just paint in here just until I have a little bit of that background. I'll go back to my magic brush, and I'll paint this out again. Okay, so remember I said that I work in zones. So let's say I want to work around the hair. What I can do is I can create a whole new set of keep and drop colors. Meaning, if I click on this first icon under both the keep and drop palettes, I now have the ability to select a whole new set of colors. And what I can do is I can turn off the first set of keep and drop colors. They don't get rid of them. It's just that Mask Pro won't actually use them for comparison. And this speeds up the processing. And the way that I turned it on and off is I just clicked on this column here on the left. And you can see for each set, you get a new little bubble. And an active set will be in gray. A deactivated set will be white. So now I'm free to select. Let's say I want to focus on the head. So I'm going to select my keep colors, and I'm going to try to select various colors of the hair. You've got all these different highlights here. And hair is extremely complex. We'll get some of the skin, some of the neckline on both sides because there's different colors. It's the same neck, but she's casting a shadow, which is causing a difference in color. So you want to make sure that you're thorough. Let's just get the little earring. Okay. Now you can see that we have a new set of keep colors. We still have our old set, but it's deactivated. And we can go to our drop colors and just kind of get a swatch. And the background here has different shades as well. So I'm trying to capture all of that. And now with a mask brush, what I can do is just start painting through. And what I'm doing is I'm retaining hair information, which would be extremely hard. You can see we're getting those strands up here that you would definitely paint out if you were just using Photoshop. And so that's all I'm doing here. I'm going to stop until I get to the shirt. And now, again, flat brush and clean up. I can make the brush size even larger. And so that's how I would have attacked the head. So you can see that the mask is actually, it's a pretty complex mask. and that's how I attack it. And then I would just repeat the process. I would create you can create whatever sets you need. Um, Now there's what we're going to do is we're going to really quickly, because I've got the colors of the dress here and the skin from the first set. What I'm going to do is turn the second set off, turn the first set on, and let's see how we get with here. And all I'm going to really focus on are the edges. And you can see it's a little dirty, and I'm not worried about that because I'm going to use the chisel to kind of clean it up. And so I'm quickly going over it here. And if I notice that it's still a little hazy, like I can see here that the mask is still a little hazy, I'm just going to select my dropper and add some new colors. And then go back to the brush and repaint it. And you can see here I painted into the skin, and I'm not worried about that. You know, it's funny because when I talk to people and I work with people on Mask Pro, when they see something like this, when you paint through the skin, there's almost a sentiment that you did something wrong or the product's not working. That's not it at all. The product's working perfectly. If you think about it, what happened here is if you're using color as a discrepancy between what you want to keep and what you want to drop, color has reflective properties. So it's very possible and it's very likely that when this picture was taken, the light that was used to illuminate this model, some of the color from the background could have been reflected on her skin. And that's totally possible. It's very easy to fix. The point is that you want to get the complex masking out of the way. All you need to do to bring that skin back is just use the flat brush, grab the restore mode with a small brush size and just paint it through and just restore it. And there you go. No big deal. You can use the magic chisel to kind of, oh, you see we're in the, let's undo that stroke and let's make sure we're in remove. It's important with every tool in this toolbar that you also pay attention to what mode you're in. It's pretty much the same mode. It's either remove or restore, but you want to be careful about that. And so all I'm doing here with chisel is I'm just painting the edge. And what that's doing is it's getting rid of that one little pixel from the background that's still kept. And what's nice about it is that it only detects edges. If you paint into the shirt or the pattern of the dress, it's not going to do anything. It's only looking at the edges. So now I'm free to take my flat brush and just clean up the rest of it. And so if we zoom out, you can see if we press 5 what we're getting with. And it's getting really nice. You can see the hair over here. The mask is actually very, very nice. And we can continue on and clean this up pretty easily. You know, we can just kind of see what we get with our existing mask or with the existing brush. And you can see that there are some dirty areas. I'm not worried about that because I can just select a new drop color and paint over it. And you can see that it's constantly refining. But you will also notice that it's taking a little bit longer. There's a little bit of a lag with the brush because I'm constantly adding new colors. The more colors I add, the longer it'll take. And I could work in segments over here, but I don't want to spend too much time because this is still the most basic image, and I can just use the color my brush here to refine, and then I can just use the chisel to get rid of that edge or that glow. But I hope you're getting the point of what this can do. I'm not going to bother finishing this image here because I want to actually move on. But that's the most basic use of Mask Pro. And if you can go to File, Save Apply, and what that'll do is it'll actually, all it did was it created a mask for you. It didn't actually do anything to your original file. You can hide this mask over here if you want. Just disable the layer mask and you'll have your original layer. And all you need to do is enable it to see what you've got. But you would not be able to get through that hair without either a lot of work with Photoshop or using Mask Pro. And actually, it's kind of cool. This background kind of works with this image in a weird, funky way. All right, so let's move on to the next image. I'm going to close this one out right here. I see a question if I could have shown the mask of the hair. I apologize for that, Michael. There's another image where I'll actually show you. I'll go and show you the mask with the hair, just so you can see. I didn't see that question until I closed the image. But I'll take care of you in a minute with that request. All right, so let's do this image here. This is another good example of where you would use Mask Pro. I know this is kind of a weird, hybrid of a portrait shot and a landscape shot, but I wanted to introduce it. This is a great shot taken by Fred Marcus Studios, a wedding shot on a golf course, except the sky is kind of bland for me. What I like to do with skies is I have my own sky on its own layer, and I do this a lot. I go out and I use, when I go out shooting, if there's a cool sky, I'll just take pictures of it for these purposes, so I have a library of skies. So what I'm going to do is I want to get the sky appearing over here. Again, what I've done is I have my main layer here, and I've got my sky right below it, separated by a layer mask. The way that I work with getting the sky positioned, you can just work like this. The sky takes up the entire screen. But I kind of want this lower part of the sky in my image. The way I like to work is I'll select my main layer, and I'll drop its opacity down really low. So what you're seeing now is the sky through the image. I'll then go to my sky image. I'll go to Edit, and then go to Free Transform. Or you can go to with a keyboard. You can use Command T on a Mac or Control T on a PC to enter Free Transform mode. And all I'm going to do is stretch the sky until it meets the bottom of the horizon of this tree line here. And I can see that I've got that pattern. And I don't mind that the sky is distorted. I mean, in reality, sky is sky. Clouds take on all sorts of shapes, so I'm not really too worried about that. When I'm done with my free transform, I can hit either enter or return on the keyboard, or I can click on this little check mark on the top to commit the transform. And so now, if we go back to our main layer and bring the opacity up to 100%, you can see where the sky is. I've essentially condensed it. And what I can do is, using the layer mask, oops, I moved the layer mask. I'll select the layer mask and go into Mask Pro. And this is a very, very common case to use Mask Pro, is to get rid of a sky that's kind of boring. Let me just move the palette out of the way. So again, we're going to select our keep colors, just selecting different ones from, all I'm focusing on again is the foreground or the edge. I don't care about the keep colors over here because I'm not going to be masking that out. And I'm just going to kind of get a good cross section. Let me zoom in. I want to get the tree trunk right there. And that one too. All right. And now if I zoom out, let me get the different shades of the sky just around the edge. And you can see, for the most part, it's the same. It's not that much of a difference. Again, flat brush. Let's get rid of most of the heavy lifting. And let's just draw an outline. I got kind of close to this over here, so I'll deal with it later if I have to. But with the bucket, let's hit 5, or let's go to View, Mode, and Composite. So now we're seeing the underlying layer. We'll hit 5, and then let's drop the bucket. So boom, we've just gotten rid of most of that. And there was not really much. That is something you can do in Photoshop. I'm just doing it in Mask Pro very quickly. With my keep colors and my drop color selected, I want to just start painting. And you can see this is, again, something that would be absolutely impossible to do in Photoshop. You would not be able, I can just paint right through the trees, keeping all the branches and maintaining consistency. I don't want the old sky through here. And I know I wouldn't be able to do it in Photoshop. And so I'm just painting along the horizon, not really worried at all that I'm cutting through the tree. And I think it's awesome. I mean, it looks great. And so Michael earlier had a question about the mask of seeing the mask of the hair. I can show you the mask of the trees, which is right here. And you can see just how complex these shapes are if we zoom in. I mean, it's impossible. You would not be able to do this in Photoshop. But this is, pretend this is hair. You know, all these little branches and leaves are just as complex of shapes as hair with all these little gaps in between them. So that's what we're doing with Mask Pro. And you can see as I draw, I'm just, it's kind of hard because I can't see where I'm drawing, but you can see the outline of the trees as we're painting. And what Mask Pro is doing is it's actively comparing keep and drop colors. So let's go back to the composite view because it's easier to see what we're doing. But that's I hope that kind of helps illustrate to you. It's not hair, but it is it's trees and branches and leaves. And you can see I'm painting right through them, and it's not getting rid of them. In Photoshop, if I went like that, that strip would be removed, and you would not see that part of the tree. But when you use color to select, I mean, it's a totally different ball game. So now we've got a nice image. Let me just fix that up over here, and let's go to File, Save, and Apply. And I apologize if it looks, I'm looking on my recorder screen, I can see it looks kind of low res. That's because I dropped from the original image that we have, I dropped it down to low res JPEG to make it a little bit faster, but the original image, the trees were much sharper. Now, if you're discerning, you'll also realize that we've changed the sky, but our foreground, which has a reflective component, which is this water, still is indicative of our original sky. There's an easy way to correct for that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this sky layer here, and I'm going to duplicate it. All I did was I dragged it. There's an icon on your layer palette next to the trash can that if you drag an existing layer onto it, it'll automatically make a copy. So we can rename this upper sky, and this one we can rename lower sky. And what I'm going to do with the lower sky is I'm going to select that layer. Again, I'm going to activate my first layer and drop the opacity down really low. Select my lower sky with my Move tool, which is the first icon on your Photoshop toolbar, and just drag it down. And I'm going to put it over the water. Again, I don't care about this middle part because there's nothing reflective about it. I'm going to go back to my original layer, boost up the opacity to 100%. Now, with the layer mask selected, not the layer, but the mask itself, I'm just going to take a paintbrush here with black, which will reveal the underlying layer, and I'm going to drop the opacity. You do not need a high opacity for this, about 10% opacity. And I'm just going to, with a big kind of fat brush, just draw in one motion, and then I'm going to do it again. And what this is doing is it's kind of, each time I'm drawing, it's revealing 10% of the layer below it. Maybe even a third time. And what you're starting to see is the blue of the sky. And then you'll do the same thing here. You want to be consistent. So any part that's reflective, you kind of want to, you don't want to draw over your bride though, and your groom. That would not be good. And I'll just finish it up. But that's what the layer mask is doing, is it's restoring some consistency. So that's kind of how you want to make sure that there's a very good, Curtis, thank you for that. Curtis reminded me, I forgot a step. And this is absolutely true, and I should have done it. I just totally forgot. With the reflection here, what I should have done was with this lower sky, and I can do it on the fly. With the lower sky selected, I need to go to Image, or Edit rather, Transform, and flip vertical. And what that does is it's inverting the shape, because all I did was I moved the sky down. What I needed to do is move it down and flip it so that it's inverted. So Curtis, thank you for that. I appreciate you bring that up. That's what I would do, is I would copy the layer, move it down, and then invert it. So that's just a direct upside down clone. So let me see. There's a good question here by Frank about what we're doing right now is we're we're using different high contrast colors. It's, we have green in the foreground and white or blue in the background. The bottom line is this: Mask Pro uses colors to differentiate. So if you have your foreground and your background that are similar, and you try to select them as keep and drop, it's not going to work. There is no magic to that. What you can do is, what I've done a lot is I will artificially change the background. So I could have selected, if we disable this mask for a second, what I could have done here to some degrees, I could have tried to use, let's say this was the sky was a closer color to the foreground. And what I mean by high contrast, you can see there is a distinct contrast between your foreground and your background. If I used a quick select, and this is just me being very rough with my selection. I'm not actually trying to spend a lot of time with this, but I want to illustrate a point. What I can do here is I can do one of various things. I can either boost the saturation or the contrast of this area. I can go into my create an adjustment layer and go to my hue saturation and really boost the saturation up. Or I can go the opposite route and I can drop the saturation, or I can remove the color and turn it into grayscale, so that I have more. Basically what I'm doing is I'm faking the color. Now remember, I'm just doing that for the purposes of creating a layer mask. I'm not actually changing the color of the image for output. All I'm doing is I'm creating somewhat of a skewed playing field for Mask Pro. I'm tricking it by changing around the background information. So I hope that makes sense when you're working with that. So that's kind of what how I attack it. But let's move on, because I want to give some other illustrations. And this is only a point I want to make. This is only the first in a series of Mask Pro webinars. This one is focused more on portraits. We'll be doing some on landscapes. And as we build the series, we're going to get into more complex tools. I didn't want to overwhelm everyone initially with everything. I find it best to work in series. So we'll start in more of a beginner's class and then work our way through. So let's get this image over here into Photoshop, our third image. Let me turn this layer off, turn this on, and turn that on. Okay. Let me just do this really quickly. Move this out of the way, bring this up here, and create a layer mask. All right. So we've got this image here, and what I want to do is we shot this person on a motorcycle with a green screen. This is a basic illustration of why you would use a green screen. This is what they do in movies. They shoot against a green screen and they use computer software to render it out and replace it with a background. This is the same background that we used on the first image. I just cropped it to the proportion of that first image. I'm not going to go into detail over, we can go through the hair and everything, but this is a quicker lesson. Let's go into Mask Pro so I can explain to you what the lesson is. So what I want to do is I just want to eliminate that the green. There's a quick way to do this. We can select our dropper and start selecting the various shades of green. Okay. Now, there's a way to kind of have Mask Pro eliminate all those colors right off the bat. If you go to your magic brush here and you make sure it's on erase mode and you double click it, Mask Pro will go through the entire image and remove all the green. Now, so what it's done here is it's gotten rid of most of it, and you can see the hair is still restored. And if we go to our mask view, here's what's happened. The point, this is again all about color. Let me go to the composite for a second. You'll notice that most of the jacket's been removed and parts of the motorcycle have been removed. The reason for that, and this is not so much to tell you about limitations of Mask Pro, but more to give you an idea of what you need to be cognizant of when you're out shooting with the idea of using Mask Pro. A lot of what this person's wearing is reflective. The leather jacket, the motorcycle, the glasses, everything, even the wig is reflective. And you can see that. It's removed portions, the reflective portions of the green. So what you can do is you can use your flat brush here with the restore mode on. We can go back to the brush and just start painting it in. And it's a lot easier as we start painting in. I'd rather paint in than paint out because for the most part, everything on the edge has been taken care of. And so all I'm doing is I'm restoring the original pixels from the original layer and just going over the hair. And you can see if you look closely in the hair, there is some of that reflective, the light reflecting through the highlights of the hair. And if you paint out, that's not a big deal because you can just, or if you restore some of that original background, I don't really worry about that. In fact, I'll usually do that. I'll brush along the edges here on the mirror. And I'll get it until I'm happy. And I can see that there are some weird strips over here, so I can just use the flat brush and just paint that out. And all I'm doing here is just restoring the original frame of the background. I'm not worried about that. In fact, I can just kind of go like this, use my bucket, fill that, do the same thing here. Just draw a strip, bucket. Now, obviously, we cut the mirror here out of the frame. I'm not concerned about that. I don't want to necessarily spend a lot of time on the artistic flaws of the shot because there are many, but that's kind of what I want to illustrate here is when you're shooting, this is the bottom line. Things are reflected, colors get reflected on surfaces. So, but if we go to our mask view, it's getting better. It gives basically what I want is this form to be totally white, and so I can continue just painting on, making sure that I get all the areas that should be white. But the hair I'm happy with. I'm actually really happy with this mask. The hair is pretty complex. There are a lot of nuances, but when you look at it, it's pretty convincing. You can see the transparency behind it, and that's what's important to me. So without spending too much time, oops, let me undo that, and just kind of get over here. And I don't want to belabor this because this is the boring part of anything is kind of watching someone just do these fine edits. It's not very constructive. But that's what I would be doing is if this was a production shot, I would start going here and excuse me, just painting through. And I see their questions. I definitely have plans to go through all of the other tools. I just didn't want to overwhelm people. Mask Pro is one of those products that I think can overwhelm people because of the concept of masking and also using color as a selection for masking. So let's go to File, Save, Apply, just to show you what can be done. And so you can see if we take the background here and move it around, you can see the various transparent. You can see the clouds through the hair. It's a pretty convincing mask. All I did was I selected, that was kind of what I wanted to show you, is if you select your drop colors, if you've got a predominant color in your background, if you double click it, it'll remove it, but it'll remove it from the whole entire image. And what I mean by double click is if you double click on the magic brush. But because we had all these reflective qualities in the leather jacket, you might want to be cognizant of that and just say, okay, maybe in my shot I want to minimize my reflective qualities or not, because you can see if you look on the motorcycle over here, you would have to do some post-processing, which isn't terribly hard. You can just, let's say we take this, and I'm going to use a command key, a shortcut. It's a Command Option Shift E or Control Alt Shift E. So again, Command Option Shift E. Let me do this. Command plus Option plus Shift plus E, or Control plus Alt plus Shift plus E. This is Mac. This is one of the coolest commands in Photoshop. It's one that gets the most questions because of how insane it is. What this command does is it'll take any layers that are existing and create a new layer on top. So it's taken all these layers and merged them into one. So I can turn all these off, and now I have almost like a non-destructive layer to work on. And the reason why I want to show this is, in the event, forget about this little green swatch here. I would get rid of this, but you can see the motorcycle still has some green. There are a few things you can do. I can dupe this layer and then go to Image, Grayscale. So I'll just remove, don't merge, discard. So now we have a black and white layer. And what I can do is I can put my color layer on top. Wait, why did it? Let me undo this. I think I removed the color history from everything. Let me just go here. And actually, I'll go one before it. Let's create an adjustment layer. And we'll just go to saturation and drop down the saturation over here. Now let's see if I can invert this mask. Basically what I want to do is, you can see that by deselecting, or let me try this again. Let me dupe this over here. And here is what we can do. Actually, you know what? I just got a time check and we are running close. I want to get through the last image. The point that I want to make is I would use, create a new layer, a desaturated layer, and mask in the desaturated portion over here, if that makes sense. I just don't want I just looked at the time and I do not want to run out of time for this last example. So let me close this out right now and work on the next one. There's a good question. Let's say there was a different reflective color. So in this case here, Frank asks, if green's not the reflective color, what if there was a reflective color here? You would have to paint in with some sort of a tint at a very low opacity to match whatever the reflection or what the indicative reflective color would be in the background, if that makes sense. It's a very good question, totally valid. Let's say that the actual, in this scene here, you would have something that was reflective more brown or more of the asphalt color. Yeah, you would have to go and kind of duplicate it over here. There is no way to restore that in Mask Pro, but you just have to kind of either use a selective color dropper, get the color of what you think is reflective, and at a very low opacity, brush onto it, which you can totally do. You can just, use the color dropper here, grab a color, say of this, and at a very low opacity, draw on it. That's a way to attack it. So, oh, and there's a question about the shortcut here. Yeah, let me do this really quickly. So there's the shortcut. Command Option Shift E, Control Alt Shift E. It's called Stamp Visible. That's the actual Photoshop command. You're taking your existing layers and merging it onto a new layer. It's a good way to kind of have a new snapshot of your image. And if you don't like it, just get rid of it and start working on it again. All right, so let me close this out and go into the last image. Now, the last image here is to illustrate how to deal with a transparent item. In this case, it's the veil. So what I'm going to do is I've got same kind of image. Got a sky. Why is my document there? I've got the bride here, on a boring day with a different sky. And so all I did was I positioned the sky where I want it in the frame. And this is similar really quickly. If we go to Mask Pro, we'll just get rid of the sky quickly and work with the veil, which is really the cool effect. So let's go and zoom the window so we kind of get rid of our distractions. And again, as always, the first thing that I'll do is I'll just brush through an outline of what I want to get rid of, making sure I keep the bouquet and the tree line, and then use my flat bucket to erase the rest of the sky. Now, what I'm going to do is really quickly just select my preview. And you can zoom in. You can use the little zoom key just to zoom in on certain parts. If you want to really refine your color selection, you can. So again, I'm just selecting different parts of the skin. You want to be careful. It's the same arm, but you've got a light part and a dark part, and those are two distinct colors, so you want to get both of them. Just like also with hair. Well, hair has a lot of characteristics of highlights and just a general mid-tone color and darker colors. So you want to just grab all of that. Get the bouquet and some of this tree line. And what I want to get rid of is the sky. Now this I'm just kind of busting through because you've seen this demo already. We've done this already. And I'm going to use the magic brush to really quickly just paint through, and you can see that's keeping all those elements, which is pretty cool. Let's just go through right around the arm. Again, an element that would be extremely hard to maintain. Keeping the hair. And I'm going to stop short of the veil. I want to treat the veil separately. But you can see how it's keeping all the little stems, the little grass that's kind of hanging out of the bouquet. That's all retained. The semi-transparent area of that ribbon is maintained. And we're going to stop right over here. So the big part of this is, all right, well, we've got this transparent area, and how do I preserve it? All right, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create two new sets of keep and drop colors and turn the first sets off. I'm going to select for my keep colors, again, the areas around where I'm going to paint. So this little tree line here, then the tree through the veil, the color of the veil itself, which is this kind of gray off-white skin through the veil, and then the hair through the veil. And you can see it's for the most part the same color, but there are some slight variations. The only color I want to get rid of is the actual color of the sky behind the veil, which is this basic white. Actually, I don't think I got a good selection. Let me try that again. There we go. Now with the magic brush, all I need to do is just paint right through. Oh, let me make sure something here. I didn't create a new set. Let me undo those two strokes. Delete that. For some reason, the new set didn't get created. Okay, so it didn't actually have any drop colors. Now we'll go here and brush through. And if we show the veil or the mask view, you can see how complex that mask is. I mean, that's an extremely complex mask, but the mask view also shows you that you've got some cleanup work to do, which you can easily do with your flat brush. You can either use a flat brush to get most of it, and then when you're ready to get close to the edge again, what you can do is select some more. We'll turn off the second drop set, turn on the first one, and same thing with the keeps. And draw wherever there's gray, just use your drop selector and select those, because those are colors you want to get rid of. And with the magic brush, let's, oh, did I not turn on? Let me make sure here. Why is it not? Delete that. Let me just select these drop colors here. There we go. And so what we're doing is just refining our selection. And you can keep doing this. And if you want, again, work in sections. so that you minimize your processor. But look, I mean, it's a really complex mask that we've created. And you can see we accidentally painted into the dress here. So just select the flat brush, change to restore, and with a really small brush size, just paint it right in. And I'm adjusting my brush size using my left and right brackets. Right bracket will make the brush larger, left will make it smaller. When you're done, and we can just clean this up right here really quickly. This area over the hair. Go to File, Save, Apply, and the sky appears. Now, I would have normally used the chisel. I didn't use the chisel because we're running out of time. But I would do the exact same thing here with the sky. I would hide this layer and then duplicate it and then invert it by going to Edit, Transform, and Flip Vertical. And then just drag it down. And now I'm free to use this mask over here with a low opacity brush. Make sure the brush is black. Just kind of do these quick swipes. And what it's doing is it's restoring some consistency in the reflection. Now I'm just being very sloppy with my drawing, but I just want to give you that point. So that is, these are some of the basic ways to use Mask Pro and some of the things that you really want to keep an eye out for when you're using it. If you have colors in your foreground and your background that are similar, do your best to kind of change one or the other, either the foreground color or the background color. Make it, boost the contrast, drop the saturation, do something that will kind of make it easier for you to create your own discrepancy. So with that, let me close here. Let me quickly look at the questions. Just looking through really quickly. There's a good question. When would I use the hard edge brush? Um, as opposed, you can adjust the hardness of your brush in Mask Pro so that you can create a feathering. Usually I'll use a hard edge brush when I know I want to get as close to the actual edge of my foreground as possible. I'll use a feathering if I want to kind of bleed my selection through. I want to create some sort of transition. So that's typically why I would use a softer brush. So with that, let me just go ahead, and I see some questions in terms of what do I mean by artificially changing my background and my foreground, and this is something that I'm going to do in the next installment of the Mask Pro for portraits, is go into more complex tasks. We ran out of time pretty easily with just 4 basic examples, and I don't want to get anyone lost too early. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this example again tomorrow. I think we have an encore of it, so I'm going to be going through it again. If you missed anything, you can come back. But we will be building on it with more complex examples. That much I promise will happen.